In episode 3 of the Outlaws Appalachian Fall Expedition, Tammy inquires about the Ohio chapter of the Outlaws and the research and methods that Kain and Eric employ. The mindset and execution of their strategies is something that even the seasoned researcher can learn from, and just shows how much Eric and Kain complement each other. Enjoy.
We had a long drive, an hour and a half to go to work, and just conversations. That's what got me actually researching. Was Eric told me that he had an encounter or a sighting 20 years ago. I'm like, man, I want to know what the fuck I saw, you know. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, at the time I was single. I didn't have nothing on the schedule. I'm like, let's go. Let's just go, you know. We'll go. We'll pick an area, and we'd pull off the side of the road, and we'd see a mountain or whatever, and we'd just hike it, you know. And just kind of by Forrest Gumping our way through it, we started having some encounters in certain spots. And then we'd remember those kind of spots. And then we, you know, a lot of times we'd go back to that spot, mm-hmm. and you'd have some activity. And then after a while, it's kind of no matter where you go, it's kind of the same general areas. And we just learned on our own, basically. You know, we didn't really follow. We just wanted to find out for ourselves and go from there. And I had some stuff when I was where I used to live when I grew up. I never thought about this when I was a kid, but there was 3 occasions that it was a lot more rural even then. We lived on a farm, and one of my earliest memories, I found half of a dog. I mean, where the dog was literally ripped in half, and it was a wild dog, or it might have even been a coyote at the time. I probably didn't know the difference, but something had ripped this dog in half, and it was just laying in our yard. And you know, I never any correlation. And then one time when I was camping, me and a buddy were out, and we heard just out of nowhere, just, you know, right up and stopped at a tent. And all I had was a knife. So I pulled my knife out, and I'm like this for hours. And I fell asleep before it ever moved away. And I don't know what it was. And at the time, we thought it was like a crazy man out there.
Right.
And the other incident I had as a kid was, we knew the woods so good back then that that was our highway. And we wouldn't even use a flashlight. We'd go through the woods in the dark, and we just knew because we had a trail, and then when you start getting into the leaves, you'd step back over. And everywhere we went through the woods, you know, to a girl's house or whatever, but we go through the woods. And on our way out one time, we were just maybe 20 yards from the end from where the field was. We were walking out, and we heard this huge break, and something screamed at us that sounded like a woman getting murdered. And I don't think my feet hit the ground for half a mile. Gone. And I got back, and my friend was a couple years older than me, and I'm like, man, you know, what the hell was that? He's like, it was a deer. A deer screamed at us. And for years, I was probably 30 before I ever had that memory again. I'm like, knowing what I know now and start getting interested in the subject, I'm like, man, that wasn't a deer. I mean, only other thing it could have been was a bobcat, maybe. They
some kind of cat.
They sound like or that, you know. And back then, I could see it. I mean, easily back then, I could see something living back there. Because there was a lot of woods. And that's kind of what I got started. Just a general interest, you know, and then
somebody did have an interest.
I started researching it on my own, And everybody at work, I was the guy they'd come up and ask me all about UFOs or whatever. I was the guy that was opening up to talk about stuff. And Eric, we had been friends a long time, and he'd never told anybody his story. I mean, he only told his dad. And then once he got to know me after a couple of years, somehow we got on the subject, and he's like, I had a sighting. I was like 20 because I saw something. And he was in the back of his car, riding with somebody, and it was in the ditch. And when he went by it, he was face to face with it as they went by in the car. And he said it was just, it was hunched down like this, and as they went by, and he said the driver, when he turned back around, the driver was rubbernecking and just said, I don't know, and they never spoke about it. So, and that was, I think, was in Ashtabula. You'd have to ask him, but I think that's where it was at. That's northern Ohio. So yeah, he told me that story, and I was like, man, let's go look. Let's just go. At the time I thought, man, Ohio ain't that big. We'll hike it. We'll hike from one end to the other. And that's how we started, And little by little, because I was skeptical. I was very skeptical of something in Ohio. I was open to the idea somewhere else, but, our first trip out, we found tracks. Just missed it. And it wasn't until we were in Wayne County when we had that big encounter where I was like, okay, there's something to this, And we tried to debunk it, we got surrounded, things were hitting trees, and we hiked all up and down trying to find if someone was messing with us, and we were hooked after that.
Really doesn't take you a whole lot to get hooked.
No.
Finding just a few things that are out of the norm, that a normal deer, squirrels, whatever, they're not going to do that, then does make you sit back and go.
And one of our rules was we're never going to use a hiking trail, just common sense. If you want to see what's out there, you need to go, off the beaten path. And from day one, we if there'd be a sign saying, don't you stay on the hiking trails.
Opposite.
There we go. That's where we're going, And that's what we just did, and it didn't take long, to start. And it took a long time to start, because we just missed so much stuff. We just missed tree knots. We just missed teepee structures. We just missed footprints with toes. Out in the middle of the woods in the winter, we just miss it because we didn't know any better. Like, yeah, that could be someone, but like one area we've researched for 6 years, we've never seen anybody back there, and that's where we found those barefoot prints in the winter. One was 13-inch and one was 6-inch tracks, and we're like, what bothered me was like, okay, because at first we're like, hey, damn hippies out here, and I was like, man, who's in the right mind will let their kid walk in the snow barefoot that far out? I mean, we were a long way from the car where we found those, and that, the evidence was there the whole time. It just took several years to really start putting it together and believing it. Like, there's something to this, you know. And now I'm careful, like with someone new, I don't want to overwhelm them, take them and show them all this stuff. Because they don't even think it exists.
Right.
So you got to start real slow and let them kind of process, on their own like we did. And, that's what I try to do now. That's how we got started.
Cool stories. I like listening to everybody's the stories.
Encounters.
I hear bears all the time. So it's like, okay, I want to hear somebody else's. I know they want to hear yours, but I want to hear somebody else's.
Yeah. And it took a couple of years to actually see something. So many times we've heard stuff, and like saying, getting bum rushed, and not see it. And it's like, what, like a freaking ghost? What in the... But, that was me and Eric going out, first couple of years we were doing 40 weekends a month going out, and each time, the first year we did 400 miles, the second year we did 1,600 miles, now we're up over, somewhere around 2,500 miles, so it's just uncharted. Whoa. And weekend after weekend after weekend, doing it and dedicating that, you know, you start having stuff happen to you. You start finding areas where something weird happened. You go back the next week and just, you know.
And you learn from the last time what to look for the next time.
Yeah. And part, I mean, people don't realize, you know, they think after something so big in the woods, but my buddy, he's your guy's size. In Ohio, if he gets 30 yards from you, you can't see him. You know, you can hear him, but you disappear in 30 yards. And they don't typically like to get any closer than 40 when in cover during the day and stuff. The tracks we find, like if we have an encounter, we'll go back the next weekend and we'll scout until we find where they were. And it's always like the closest during the day has been like 40 yards. You know, 40 yards, 100 yards. And I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Like 40 yards. You know, 40 yards, 100 yards. And I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, quit. Tell him to sit. And even now, you know, I make it a point to be in the woods every single night. And not because just looking for Bigfoot, but you understand what's normal noises in the woods, and you understand what's not. You understand, you know, pheasants, you understand deer, how they sound, you understand. And then you recognize what's not normal.
Right.
You know, you understand like an acorn falling and hitting makes it sound. Squirrels can sound like the freaking Sasquatches. And you start learning all those noises, and then you hear the different noises, and that's the ones like that. You know, that's not normal. You know, I mean, things clang, but I hear something like that, I look up and see if the wind's blowing. You know, trees will knock or rub, and wind ain't blowing. You know, so that would make me perk my ears up. Hear something like that out in the woods. And then we go right at it.
It's like we all heard it, and okay, everybody's going, okay, what, where?
And that's what produced a lot of our encounters is we'd hear a knock and we'd go, I mean, straight towards it. And I don't think they're used to, and that to me shows their hand. They have to show their hand because they make that knock. It's usually a warning to the other group. You're not supposed to hear that. You're not supposed to, definitely not supposed to go directly towards it. So then it kind of forces their hand like, okay, these boys are coming right at me, you know. Then they got to do something else. You know, they got to do something to stop you because they're probably trying to let the family group get away, and it'll ramp up. You know, the more you press, the next thing you might get another knock, or you might get rocks thrown at you. You know. And you'll be looking, it'll be like this, and just there's rocks, and you're like, where's rocks coming from? And then if you keep pressing, usually then it's something aggressive, like a tree, you know, something to kind of scare you. And about then, I think that's when they call in the reinforcements, and that's the next stage. You're going to get triangulated, and then you're in a situation you shouldn't have pressed that far.
Yeah.
You know, so, but you can kind of ride that fine line and repeat that. We've repeated that where we hear a knock, go straight at it, and the same thing happens. The rocks, and then it gets a little more aggressive, and that's usually about when we stop.
Decide to back off.
Yeah, we don't want to die. You know, and the only times we've had aggressive is when we've been compromised, like we were in a blizzard, and no reason to be out in the woods, and that was one of the times it was scary. Because I think they were trying to, you know, they had us, you know, we're 2 hours from the car in the woods with snow up to our knees, and that's when they got frisky on us, you know. And
see who can run through the snow the fastest.
Yeah, you're dead if they want to, and I think they use that at certain times, or like if someone's alone, you know, they're going to get friskier. Usually if you have two people, you know, I think they'll stop you. They'll stop. That's their job.
Well, I mean, that's what Bear has always said. The numbers, when you have the numbers, you're least likely to see things because they're going to back off.
Yeah. And you know, that sentry up there, that's his whole job, is to warn, so you can use that against him. He's gonna warn. He's got to do something. And then it's his job. You know, if you press him, it's his job to stop you. You know, somehow. And he don't want to be seen, especially during the day. That's like the last resort. That's what I've always said. If you see one in the day and he pops up, you might want to watch your ass, because that's his last resort. At that point, you press too far, you startled him.
He has spent years trying not to be seen, and all of a sudden he was. Now
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah. So I mean, that's what the aggressive knocks and stuff. But when they're in close, within that 40-yard range, they don't knock like that. You know, they start doing click biting. You'll hear that, and you'll hear over here, and they're positioning on you. You know, and you'll hear those little. It sounds like a little tender, little. When they're closer, and if they get in a good position, then they might scare the hell out of you with a big crack. But that's how they. And like the time in the blizzard, they kept trying to push us. There was one in front, and it was real thick area. They kept getting aggressive, and it was weird. If we would walk, they would get lighter. If we'd stop and look around, they'd get real loud. They were trying to give us a message. And we finally were like, I'm not going in that. You know, Eric was actually the one who's like, I'm not getting that thing, you know. So we actually walked right towards where the knocks were coming from to get out. And we just stayed in the open all the way through. And it was the following weekend is when we went back and found all their positions. And there was one right on the other side of that thicket that they were trying to push us to. So,
Because once you got in the thicket, you're definitely in their zone.
yeah, you can't see. You know, you can't see 20 feet. So, you know,
3 steps and I got you.
yeah, and that's what they do to deer. So it's hard to say. You know, you're getting.
3 steps and I got you.
Yeah, and that's what they do to deer. So it's hard to say. You know, you're getting.
Do you lose a leg or not?
Yeah. They're going, you know, what are they trying to do here? They went into like hunting mode or something.